Oh, that's a good way to start off. Completely muted myself. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining us. I am Adam Howe. I am a solutions engineer with GoTab Point of Sale. We really focus on integrating technology into the whole experience at brew pubs. We kind of were born in a brewery, and we live vicariously through all the brew pubs that we partner with as well. A little bit about myself real quick, and then I'll introduce Evan as well. I've been working in breweries and brew pubs pretty much my entire adult life since 2008. I worked with Pyramid Brewery out in the Northwest, Drake's Brewing out in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then after moving to the Indianapolis region, spent some time with Upland Brewing and Taxman Brewing out here as well, all on the brew pub side, operating the various locations for each one of those brands, and incorporating the full experience through not only the beer presented, but obviously the food and the ambiance as well. Now, I'm very fortunate to be able to partner with a whole lot more breweries through GoTab, where we partner with Stone Brewing, Maui Brewing, Mighty Squirrel, Caboose Brewing, a whole bunch of other ones in between throughout the country. And it's nice to be able to not only present opportunities through GoTab and what we can present, but also be able to take in all their experiences as well, and then share them with our other partners as well, and then share them through panels like this as well. So beyond that, we also have Evan Blum. Evan, I'll let you take the mic, and I won't do you the injustice of trying to introduce you.
uh, Thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. My name is Evan. I'm the co-founder of BrewedAt. We are a craft beer focused media and marketing company, currently based in Philadelphia, but working on building our brand to really encapsulate the changing dynamics within craft beer and specifically targeting and connecting all of this to Gen Z. And that's through in different engaging events, um, just different opportunities that somebody from Gen Z could resonate with and bringing in beer to this picture. So we do that through a multitude of ways, as we'll talk through today. And we work with a ton of breweries in the Philadelphia area, including like Yards, Love City, Vault, as well as other professional organizations and other like companies looking to get in front of breweries. So very multifaceted and just looking forward to having this conversation today.
Yeah, I mean, I am too, because full disclosure, I am not Gen Z. And so I'm here to also learn just as much as I am to present, to be honest with you, Evan. We are, I work with a technology company. Obviously, we know that Gen Z lived and breathed technology from the day that they were born. I was fortunate enough to be part of a generation that knew what the analog world looked like at one
Hmm.
point or another, and I got to see the transition happen. So we'll talk a lot more about the integration of technology into everyday experiences, especially at brew pubs, especially as Gen Z and everybody else chooses, where to go and where to enjoy themselves. But I'm gonna tee up a question for you real quick though. Let's give a brief synopsis of what exactly Gen Z is, and any overarching trends, because every generation is different, right? Every
Yep.
generation has done different things. Every 10 or 15, 20 years, we start seeing different trends go through. Can you walk us through what you've experienced, what you've seen in your research and the data, as far as what Gen Z is and what they're doing?
Yes. So, brief overview, Gen Z is essentially age ranges from 1997 to 2012. That's like 28 to 13 time frame range. And they're obviously very important right now as they're the current age group that is entering the alcohol
Sure.
space. So that's where a lot of this focus comes in at this very moment. And it's going to be, as in the next 3 to 5 years, a majority of Gen Z is going to be of the age of 21. So it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger as far as purchasing power goes in the industry. But like from a Gen Z standpoint, their formative years everybody was grown up with an iPhone. That's kind of how like I like to present it. I'm older Gen Z, so I do remember a time without an iPhone. But you could imagine like it's a very different landscape from having technology in your hands your entire life. So some interesting stats that always pop out to me is somebody from Gen Z spends about 7.5, I believe, to like 9 hours on their phone per day, which is almost unfathomable to like understand at some point, but it's just kind of the way that the culture is going with this generation. And with this comes a bunch of other sort of things that we have to understand about Gen Z and who they are, just based on like kind of where the world is today at this point. So like Gen Z with just like the housing market and financial hardships are seeing other things where purchasing is much more specific. They have a much deeper awareness of like, if I'm going to be spending money, this is where I'm going to be spending my money and why I'm spending my money. So that's something that's very important as we kind of get into this.
Yeah, I mean, it really sounds like, of course, it's a value proposition. It's like, I'm not just going out to eat. I'm not just going to the bar for the sake of going to the bar. I want to make sure I'm getting something more out of my experience than I would be if I just invited my buddies over to my place and we just, drink from the fridge,
Yeah.
which is totally an experience in and of itself. So yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, I feel like I always grew up that way. Always wanting to know like, hey, not only I have a certain amount of I have a certain budget. As I'm going out, I want to make sure it's going to go as far as I can. And when I find that place where I know I'm going to get a consistent service, if I know I'm going to get a consistent, or I know what to expect, that's usually where I spend my money. But experience being able to get to that point and actually being introduced to something new so that you can feel that confidence, you can feel that connection back with that brand. There's obviously a very specific, well, not specific way, but there are some specific ways in which you can really kind of draw those people in, especially in this generation.
Mhm.
How, like, what kind of, what, I mean, can you walk me through any other of those decisions that Gen Z is making and how they're making it? Not only is the fact that they're looking for that value, they're looking for that experience, but where are they looking for that? Like, is it completely social media? Is it old school in the future?
Yeah.
What different types of media outlets? Listen to podcasts, all that stuff. Like, how are they making those decisions? How are they getting that information?
Certainly. So it really goes down to a mix of, I guess, what we'd say old school and new school. Um, Word of mouth is, I would say, the strongest source, and that still is to this day. When you have somebody in this generation that really does appreciate a brand and brand recognition is extremely strong, that will go a long way. But then as well, like you see some things like podcasting has become a huge piece of new source where people are getting their information, and actually mainstream, as we know in the kind of mainstream television realm, that is really beginning to kind of like phase out to social media and podcasting, where you have much more independent sources that somebody can trust in them. And when they do, that's where they get a lot of their just appetite to follow up and really dive into what these sources have to say. Um, yeah, and I can pull up. I would love to show just some stats on podcasting because I think that's something that's
Yeah, as you pull that up, like just something else to follow up with and put. And so on the side, I podcast as well is not beer related; it's all baseball related, but it's a ton of fun and I really enjoy doing it. But the best way to also get the word out about what I'm doing in that podcast is to go on other podcasts, and so what I would say about podcasting as a suggestion is you don't have to create your own podcasts. Like I think that's what a lot of, content creation will definitely go a long way, whether it's, YouTube videos and telling your story about your brewery, different experiences and all that. Great. That's great. And that will definitely get out there. But just to get your toe in the water, may I recommend just get on a podcast. Reach out to existing podcasts, be like, hey, I would love to get on your podcast, talk about my brand, talk about my beer, and then those people who are listening, it might go beyond what your brand is actually presenting in your area, but you're still going to strengthen your brand recognition in a direction that is being consumed by the exact target audience that we're talking about today.
Yeah, and also just to add to that point quickly, while you can certainly also, and I recommend as well jumping on and talking about podcasts, there are so many podcasts in this space at this point that is all local and everybody has a podcast about different things. If that's a target market that you might want to approach, even something like sponsoring with your beer, so they will be drinking your beer on the podcast, your beer will be known to that podcast community. So something's just those are a few different like ways to kind of work it as well.
It's the new product placement. It's like
Hmm.
all those times in the movies in the '80s where you saw somebody drinking a Coke. That's all that was. They weren't, they didn't choose the Coke. Coke paid them to put that product in there. Podcasting, same thing. You're just targeting your audience, exactly who you're trying to reach, by picking and choosing the exact podcasts that are, talking to the guests that you're actually trying to incorporate. Um,
Absolutely.
Podcasts aren't the only way. We had a question before recording about TikTok. The question is, Evan, do you have to be on TikTok? Whether it's actively creating content or if you are incorporating yourself into TikTok or Reels or, any of the short video content, do you find that I make short videos for GoTab myself, posted on YouTube, posted on LinkedIn, things like that, and they're not hard to make. As long as you are telling a story about your brand, about the functionality, the different beers that you have, the experiences that you can provide, to incorporate. But how important do you think it is to be in that space to really bring in that Gen Z crowd?
Yeah, I think that is extremely, extremely important. When you look at some of just the numbers on social media, and just like as I alluded to before, with Gen Z spending 7 to 9 hours on their phone, a majority of that time is through social media. That is where they are spending a lot of their attention. And the way that I like to put it is giving the breweries an opportunity to be in front of this audience is important. And with social media, it is a free tool to use for your brand. And it's an opportunity to really express creativity and freedom to somebody that would be interested in like a younger generation. So I highly recommend. Everything I will say is strategic as well. So one thing I do recommend is when you're posting or when you're looking at and trying to understand, focus more on the story, as you alluded to, rather than
Nice.
the placement of we're doing this to sell this. Because something with Gen Z, as we discussed, digital natives, they are able to see directly through that as secondhand nature.
Right.
And that's not the message that they want, nor you want them to understand of you. But it's talking about like what makes you guys different, the passion behind what you're doing, whether that's a beer, that's authentic, and that's kind of what they want to see in short form. And having fun with like who you are. And yet again, it's all resource based. I know a lot of brewers and breweries are like, I don't want to do TikTok dances. You don't have
You know,
to,
sure. I
but you
also
can.
don't want to do TikTok dances, so that's
Yeah,
we're on the same page there.
yeah, exactly. Me too. I'm not doing any TikTok dances.
Yeah.
But it is still the free resource to get your name out there in a different way in front of that audience that you need to start getting in front of.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, in content creation in that way doesn't mean you're doing it every single day either. It's like as long as the content you're creating is getting any kind of traction, is getting into the feeds, is feeding into the algorithm, and people who are just flipping through, they're gonna see it at some point, once a
Yep.
week, once every other week. Like just have that content continuously be integrated into the algorithm. It'll get through. It'll get out there. So there's not a lot of time or sweat equity that has to go into it. And I guarantee you, somebody on your staff has experience making content on the side, and so it doesn't even have to be you as the brewery owner. Your part-time bartender would be
Yep.
interested in doing something like this, and that makes it even more authentic when you're incorporating your staff into the content creation as well, whether they're going on a podcast or they're making videos, or they're interacting with people socially as well, just through Twitter and commenting on other videos as well, and other content, to draw people back in. Sometimes the comments, especially on TikTok videos, are better than the actual content themselves, and so you get even more draw from that. Um,
Hmm.
I want to back up a little bit, Evan. I want to talk about, we hear this every year that, consumption of alcohol is just going down. Simple as that. It's not even just craft beer. It's pretty much all different avenues of consumption. So, should we be concerned targeting an audience that is supposedly, young people are drinking less beer and alcohol? Like, should that be a concern moving forward? And if so, is there a way that brew pubs that you found that they can pivot to, draw in the non-alcohol drinking crowd while still providing them with different environments?
Yeah. So my initial thoughts on that is we certainly hear this a lot, right? And there is truth to Gen Z is drinking less, but they're also in my like they're drinking with more of a purpose as well.
Sure. Okay.
So it's focusing on how to draw them in, and they will still be drinking as the draw. It is much less about the beverage, but more about the experience and what is going on there, as that will support the bar industry and having people in locations. I love to think about this all the time, but the breweries and bars have really become like a third space, similar to like how a coffee shop operates. You go there and you spend time there. It's about spending time there and being able to have fun and just in different sorts of ways. And so with that, there is certainly like a change in different tastes and profiles over the years and in the generation that will need to be addressed, as we're seeing a different movement in low ABV beers, um, less carbonated, gluten free, but having those options and being approachable and welcoming is a key to continuing to draw people into your tap rooms, so you can ultimately just invite anybody in to spend money, where it's not a certain sector of the industry that we might be seeing in this current moment.
I love that you kind of brought it together with, it's not just about Gen Z. Obviously, there are still other generations that are coming in. They have been coming in. If your tap room's been open for multiple years, they've
Yep.
been coming in for years, right? And so giving, giving the ability to meet everybody where they're at, not only with the experiences that you're providing, the products that you're producing, but also the technology that you're utilizing. And this is going to be, of course, my plug for GoTab is being whatever point of sale you're using, whatever technology you're incorporating, being able to meet your guest where they're at rather than force them to go one way or another. Like being able to allow guests to completely have control over their ordering experience with their own devices, because as you mentioned, Gen Z, they're on their own, they've had their own devices in their pocket since basically the day that they were born, or the first day that they could wear pants with pockets. And so they're going to be more apt to utilizing that kind of technology, whereas maybe generations like older millennials, Gen X, that are still coming into the brew pubs because they have a connection with that. They're not as drawn to that technology because they long for a day where technology wasn't in every part of their life. And so being able to mold those two together it enables you to keep those generations that have been coming in for a while, and then also draw in the extra crowd as well. So flexibility with whatever solution that you are using in your tap room is extremely paramount. Now, I just talked about a little bit about the experiences that transcend different generations. And I'm an older millennial, I guess technically. I always forget where the borderline is, but early '80s, whatever that is. And I definitely trend toward technology based experiences when I go out. So like I have my phone in my pocket at all times. I have no problem placing my entire order on my own without interacting with another human being. I like interacting with other human beings, but I have no problem doing it all on my own as well. So like there's got to be trends that have shifted over time. Like how sticky are these are trends, and how often do you see or do you think that older generations bring in the trends of younger generations rather than I don't it doesn't seem to be the doesn't seem to work the other way around. Like the youngest generation always just creates their own trends. And how sticky do their trends become with the older generations?
Yeah, and that's the like almost the generational cat and mouse game. Like it,
Sure.
it's gonna happen every time, and it's gonna change the system in a lot of ways every time. Once somebody does get into like a generational pattern, just through what I've seen through my like research, trends do become somewhat like sticky. Like millennials, for example, and you can potentially attest, shifted towards quality and persisted into like their older like 30s, and then those behaviors began to influence how the current marketplace was acting to attract to them. So it's something where Gen Z does, and you're starting to see these types of patterns. And certainly there are going to be a lot that are going to stick. There's also going to be a lot that change as they grow, as we talked about a little bit earlier. I mean, Gen Z's big, like one of the biggest things is the housing crisis for them not being able to like actually purchase a home. I know it's hard to say what that's going to look like in 5 to 10 years, but they're going to have other influences similar that's going to change their ways of acting towards and around the space. I think the key part for bars, but our breweries to really understand is who is your specific target, and how do you target Gen Z if you're really wanting to stay in and involved with this generation. Because certainly there are breweries in the space that might not want to and might want to stay in the traditional lane and in with like a more traditional, let's go with taste, let's go with X, let's go with this. And that would be your target. but you're going to have to see some shift as well if you're looking more towards the future a bit, in as far as we are going to have to adapt to some of these trends. So it's gonna be a fun kind of time, and I think creativity and experimentation, innovation, those are a lot of key things to continue to embrace, really.
I mean, simply put, like we've seen a lot of things happen in in our lifetimes, right? It's like we are all part of like a larger generation that can, how many times can we say, "Do you remember where you were during a major event, worldwide event?" We saw how all restaurants, if not, definitely breweries and brew pubs, had to adapt in 2020, 2021, and had nothing to do with generational changes. It's just,
Yep.
obviously, they outsourced that change that had to be made. And so but that just shows you how adaptable you have to be in order to keep going. I've talked to so many breweries, and it's so surprising to hear like, oh yeah, when did you guys open? Oh, of course we opened in like May of 2020. I'm like, oh, that seems like a perfect time to have started. And you know what? They're the ones that they're still talking. I mean, they're still talking to me, and they're still talking about how the ways in which they can improve, in which ways how they can continue to thrive. And so like they were forced to adapt early and often, and those who were able to and put themselves in a position to adapt and create flexible events, create more adaptable technology into their service environment. It changed the way in which you draw people into your brew pubs. Extremely important to continue to not only stay stagnant but to grow. And yes, I'm sure there's plenty of people watching that, we have no intention of growing. We have no intention of opening up a second location. That's fine. But literally just treading water, you have to, in order to tread water in this day and age, you also have to be able to adapt to your surroundings, in order to just not only keep the people coming in, but also bringing in new faces. Great question. We're going to get to it in a second anyway, so I'll just jump right into it. um, Evan, I want to talk to you about the different events that you have been a part of, you are currently planning. And then I also want to throw out an idea that I had like 2 days ago that I haven't shared with anybody yet. But the question was like, what events and experiences are Gen Z interested in? Seems like no longer interested in like your standard trivia nights, your bingos, and things of that nature. Things that I definitely grew up with. Brewers dinners were a regular thing at the breweries that I worked at as well. What is the engagement looking like for Gen Z to actually get them in the door?
Yeah, and that's obviously something we will love to go through. So one of there's a bunch of different ways, but ultimately from a high level, the way that I like to see it is, what is something that resonates with Gen Z? What resonates with the current generation? And how do you then utilize that as a tool and put something together in your brew pub, your brewery, that can draw that crowd in? And one thing that we have seen is, as we have been in this space, like I've seen video games as one of the strongest tools around. If just paying attention to like what's going on with screen time and how people engage, and I'm sure anybody listening knows, just with their kids, if you have kids, they're probably playing Minecraft, Roblox, Call of Duty, anything, Mario. And as that generation evolves, that's some of their core interests. So being able to utilize that in and around your location to draw in that crowd, they'll come in and they'll be willing and happy to spend time and money at locations. So, for example, just one of the things that we do, we have some quarterly video game tournaments that we put on at different locations. And I just pulled the stats from our latest one, but We sold 130 tickets at the one location, and 38% Sunday over Sunday increase on sales for them for the day by just drawing in, and we played Mario Kart. We got 64
Wait, which one?
people.
Which one? Because there's a lot of them now.
Yeah, yes. Mario Kart 8 on Nintendo Switch.
Okay, all right. I'm old school. I like
Yeah.
Mario Kart 64. Like I just like the original, well, semi original. But yeah, it's still
And there
it's a fun time.
it is. And we're like obviously thinking about that too, is just like we're definitely going to do something with Nintendo 64 too to at some point. Um, but it's simple for just having these video games as almost a resource as anything else to bring in people that are playing these or engaging with these and just opening up the brewery for the opportunity to draw in this crowd
Mhm.
and focus on that. So that's certainly something. And the other trends I like to showcase is like house music right now, local music artists that are younger and geared towards the younger crowd. That's also going to attract them. But it's working towards putting your mind in what somebody of Gen Z would appreciate or want to come out to see. And I also recommend like using anybody you have in your tap rooms, kids, as a tool and just pick their brain because they'll certainly be happy to talk about what their interests are. And so I know me and Adam were just talking before this. I'm gonna have to bring this up, but like we want to do like a SpongeBob watch party.
There you go.
It's silly, but it works, and you can have so much fun with it with like theming different beers that go along with it, having some sort of decoration or whatever. There's just a lot of creative energy in that, and that's what the experience is.
What's nice about doing something like that is you can incorporate your entire brew pub into that event.
Yep.
You could change your menu items on the fly, where it's like if somebody's placing their order and all of a sudden they're looking for the pineapple under the sea uh, product. It's just a burger. Like it's just obviously you gotta sell Krabby Patties somehow. But like you're just repurposing with things that are already on your menu and rebranding them just for that event. So as orders are being placed, they're being presented in that way. They're being immersed into the experience through their ordering experience, through their interactions with with the staff, through the branding of your beers, even if it's just for that one day. And making it as immersive as possible, I think, goes the furthest along. One of the best events I ever put on. This was not toward Gen Z because this happened in like 2010 or 2011. But we had in the brew pub that I was working at, we had a very large parking lot. We ended up partnering with a local adult dodgeball league, and we put on an adult dodgeball tournament out in the parking lot. With all the proper, insurance lines and things like that. But that was like that brought in a crowd that had never seen our brew pub before. They had never even thought of coming in, but they came in for that reason, and hopefully that created a completely different mindset for the connection that they've made to that brand. And I saw plenty of them coming back in throughout that time. What's nice is that what you want to be able to do with events like that is, again, yeah, just to tack on to the question. It's like, yeah, people, they can get trivia night anywhere. Like trivia nights are like, you can go to any bar and find their trivia night. Simple as that.
Yep.
Because if that's what you're looking to do, you don't really care where you're doing it. But if you are looking to do something different, you want that connection to be made with your location, with your brew pub, with your brand, and be able to make that long lasting connection so that they come back, they connect that association with future visits as well. I
Yep.
used to tell my staff all the time, it's like with the breweries that where we distributed our beers, the experience that people had in our brew pubs carried over when they went to the liquor store or the grocery store to pick up the 6-pack off the shelf. And if they had a great experience when they were in the brew pub, then they're more likely to grab that 6 pack off the shelf from the grocery store because they're associating the experience that that you provided in that manner. Same thing is true. Just trying to draw people in, they're going to associate the types of events that you are putting on with your brand. And so even when you're not putting on those events, your people are still associating that with your brand, and they're going to come in regardless. The idea that I had, I want to run by you. You talked to me last week or before about scavenger hunts,
Yes.
and so with GoTab, we have the ability to create secret menus. So you have the ability to create different menus that are available either at different times or at different areas in the venue. And so, the idea of making an interactive experience, not only maybe it starts outside the brew pub in a TikTok video, on a social media post, what have you. It's like, and you have people join into what we call a segment. You join into a segment that gives you access to the secret menu. And then as you order throughout the venue, whether you're ordering at the bar or ordering from booth number 2 or, maybe on the patio, there are different options or different beers that are available only in those certain areas and only if you interacted with that segment prior. So you had to basically like opt into it. It's just the idea of having people be, again, more interactive with their technology for those who are interested in, and we've already established Gen Z is very interested in it.
Hmm.
They're already immersed in it. Being able to, go through the venue and actually consume more product than they probably would have because they are actively searching for it. They're actively engaged in the experience. This doesn't even have to be like a trip, like an event. Like this is just like an immersive experience that you're able to provide to your guests throughout. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's throughout an entire week, and be able to make a more immersive experience as well.
Hmm.
So
Certainly, and scavenger hunts is a great tool right now as well, without a doubt.
cool. Um, so this is a great question too that just came in as well. Dan asked about like how long should these events last? You talked about the experience at the brew pub being more like a coffee shop where people are hanging out. Maybe they're meeting some people still, but they're getting work done. They're just consuming as they go. But like with these kind of experiences, whether they're immersive or like one-time events, like what should be the time frame that they are planning to either be busier or to just completely like how much time do they need to plan to be entertaining these new guests?
Yeah, and that fantastic question. Hey, Dan. Um, it really does depend on the type of event, I would say. Whether that similar to like if that's a video game tournament, as we talked about, that is something people are willing to stay for a long period of time to complete the tournament. So if that is something that you're looking to put on a Sunday, you can expect a handful of hours as long as you have a resource to continue and just hold the energy, let's say, of the event. But it really is like based on different types of events. So obviously we have worked on a lot of different creative initiatives, and some of those are multi-length, being multiple months as far as events, and something that I think is important to like show and talk through. I'm going to share my screen again. We've been working on this event for the past year and a half, 2 years, where we have it's almost a digital passport in a way where I'm calling it almost a new age beer fest, where every brewery that's a part of it, participants will get a free pour at location. So it allows people to, my goal is to build a relationship with the brand itself, get in and immersed in the space, and let people activate and utilize that space however they might want in a normal setting as well. But playing with that idea, there's ways to build like passports or scavenger hunts to that matter that open up the space to this where it doesn't have to be any different than your normal day-to-day operations, but it just inviting this group to hang out and enjoy the space. So something I love about this event we did last year is 30% of our ticket purchasers was Gen Z. And that's something that super proud of given only like there's a 5 year age group that's actually in Gen Z at this point.
Hmm.
So having something, and there are statistics showing right now, which I have alluded up here too, that Gen Z is not as willing to really travel to a new brewery more than 10 miles.
Hmm.
But as you look at that from a, that's the beer standpoint of it. But if you look at it from the experience standpoint of going and experiencing, engaging in these places, it changes. And then everybody at that point, they're consuming your beer and your brand. And then that's where you get into, again, okay, now I'm at the store. Now I'm at a local restaurant. I see your beer on the menu. I have a great connection between, I had a fun time at your location that I wouldn't have stepped in before.
Right. Yeah, the one area that I've always kind of really was driven by was creating experiences and not say discounts. And the having giving like really driving instead of doing a happy hour, doing a time period in which you could only get driving scarcity. So like we would only make a certain beer available between 3 and 5 o'clock, or those beer releases, really making it a full event around that beer rather and still you're still able to create a new experience for people while still making that association with the brand, with the beer itself, instead of just trying to drive people with discounts. There's always going to be a place for discounts and things of that nature, but it's ultimately to your one of your original points, Evan. It's like that is not the driving factor. Like price is not the driving factor for Gen Z. It is value. And if they feel like they're getting something more, even they're going to be willing to pay for it because they're going to be very selective with where their money is actually going. So if you're able to create different experiences, it could be item availability. It could be revolved
Yep.
around specials that are a more immersive experience as well, whether it be about your beer or just about the space as well, the space that you have available. I did another panel here a couple months ago where we talked about specifically utilizing your different spaces to create those experiences, whether
Yep.
it be for private events or for like festivals. Because on me, I like that you said like your passport is basically your new age or your digital brewery festival, because live festivals are, and if there's not, they're the same thing as just like a straight brew pub. If there's not something special about it, if it's just like, hey, come and sample a bunch of beers, that is not drawing this crowd into those events. So if you're able to create those events on property, that are drawing in a new crowd, again, going back to that idea where that's going to make that association stronger with your brand, not only in house, but if you are distributing to other bars, you see that tap handle, you
Hmm.
see it, the 6 or 4 pack on the shelf at grocery stores and liquor stores and what have you.
Yep.
That's going to go a long way. And how you incorporate not only tech but just the experiences in general at your tap rooms, is going to be the driving factor for that. Um, so, I mean, all this stuff, it not only takes creativity and time and effort, but it takes money. A lot of the times, a lot of it can be sweat equity. Don't get me wrong. Like there's definitely a lot of work that can be done that on your end, whether it's like I said before, tapping into your staff that you have on premise to not only make content but also help you plan and promote these events and have them getting the word out, word of mouth, as you mentioned, strongest thing that you can possibly do. And getting the buy-in from your staff is incredibly important. But there are other things that, I put in that dodgeball tournament I talked about. It wasn't free. It was a partnership, but I still had to buy the licensing and buy the insurance and all that fun stuff that went along with it. And so, how much, what's the return on investment here in your experience when you're putting on these events? Like, is the price baked into these events like that your Mario Kart tournament that you were talking about? Do you see brew pubs putting in like is the price of admission and food and beverage built into the ticket price? Is it a one-off thing, or is it like, are you doing like subscriptions and memberships for ongoing events as well, which is another option people can be looking
Hmm.
into, is being able to sell an ongoing subscription or membership for ongoing events. Maybe you do a monthly event, maybe you do, quarterly events, and have people buy into it annually so that you have a guaranteed revenue stream throughout your experience. Talk to me about like what you see as like the ROI for
Yeah.
these types of things.
Yeah. So for us, and it's going to be different for everybody. It's full disclosure. It's a partnership between us and these locations with how we're working these types of events.
Mhm.
As we're bringing in the crowd and we're working that, we'll take majority ticket sales, and then the bar from the crowd we bring in will make their revenue from the actual patrons.
Mhm.
So, and every time it works a little bit differently, depending on the space, the days, the etc. But it is that, and it's something, if you have like event staff already doing these events, you'll be able to really like capitalize and just focusing in on building those experiences. So it will be different in, I would say, a lot of cases, but the ROI for the bars, breweries, everybody, it's going to be a little different, and it's ultimately just a partnership and like revenue share from our standpoint.
Sure. And if you're doing something on your own, obviously it takes, again, partnering with the right group, whether it's internal or external, to, get the word out about the event, about, organizing the event and actually executing it, is extremely important. But, something that you can always look into when you're doing these events is, again, I alluded to it earlier in the question, but being able to build in the actual revenue
Yeah.
into the event itself. So
Yes.
if you just invite a bunch of people over to play Mario Kart, like you're gonna get plenty of people that just sit down and play Mario Kart, and
Yes.
that's all they do. When it
Yeah.
was, if you go to watch parties, like when you have there'd be sports bars and what have you that would do like UFC watch parties and stuff like that. Very simple. They would charge like a $25 minimum. It's like it wasn't like price of admission. It was just like, hey, yeah, you can come watch and you can do this event, but you got to spend some money. And so if you have the ability of setting that kind of a minimum, whether it's through your technology that you have in place now, or just like having somebody at the door, you could totally do that, where you maybe at price of admission is just buying a gift card
Yep.
in advance so that you can use the gift card at the day of the event. And with GoTab, you could actually issue out somebody a coupon that can expire. So it's like you actually purchase something and it expires after the event. So it would be, it gives you a lot more flexibility to really drive guaranteed revenue to that day of the event, and not just, I mean, everybody can sell gift cards, but
Yep.
gift cards don't typically expire. So if you're able to really direct that revenue generation to the event itself, you're able to then track that as well. If you're able
Yep.
to see what the actual results were of these events from a financial standpoint, that's extremely important, because it is one thing to say, hey, we're going to do these events and we're going to bring in a new crowd. is it working? And the easiest way to measure that is, financially. Is as
Yep.
long as you're tracking that association, you're able to do that in a mindful manner, whether it's through customer order history and trends of that nature. If you're able to track that, and then also marketing campaigns that you're able to tap into that information to drop them back in. um, you know when you're ordering through your guest ordering, if you're utilizing that technology, you're able to communicate directly with them as they're ordering as well, through
Mhm.
messages that pop up during their ordering sequence, where you're able to promote future events, thank them for their current events that they're participating in, and issue swag and coupons of that nature to really drive them into a more immersive experience throughout their experience as well. Um, what what other events have you been, I don't know, be part of or hoping to actually put together in the near future that is, I mean, and everything that you do, Evan, is directed at Gen Z.
Yes.
Um, so like talk, is there anything else that you guys have been kind of really thinking about doing and you just haven't executed yet? Can you give a peek behind the curtain here?
Yeah. So we have a few good ones kind of lined up. This is gonna fall in theme with the video game uh theme, I guess, but already planned out to next year before the Super Bowl at a few breweries. We're gonna do some like Madden tournaments the
There you
week
go.
before the Super Bowl. And winner, we're gonna have a Lombardi trophy of some sort, that's the prize, that's the buy-in. Also factoring in like these costs to the price of the ticket, which is huge. So having that, bringing in like different jersey vendors, like somebody who's going to sell the coolest jerseys. Having also, I'm from Philly, so go Birds. But if the Eagles,
Congratulations.
thank you, appreciate that. Uh, Whoever wears the best Eagles jersey, like the coolest Eagles jersey, they get a gift card to the brewery, right? So stimulating that sort of engaging and repeat customer, etc. Um, and then here's one that I'm really like I'm unsure if this will work or not, honestly, but I love the concept. Um, Big wrestling fan, so the Royal Rumble. If you were to put together a Royal Rumble, right, like in the video game, you can have up to 8 players at one point. So you buy a ticket to the event. You don't know who your entry is. You don't know what your placement is.
The blind drop, I like that.
But if you win the
You win
championship.
big. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So
Yeah, but again, it's not just like a raffle. It's not just like put your name in a hat type of thing. It's like you're immersed into the experience, and the experience that you have, win or lose, you
uh-huh.
are now associating with the experience you had within the four walls of that tap room. So
100%.
that goes a long way. Something that you talked about a little bit earlier that I'm always a big fan of is collaboration with not only other local entities but other local breweries, and really combining resources, sharing information, whether it's sharing guests or sharing like doing collaborating. I mean, a lot of breweries do collabs, where it's able to really draw people from one brewery to the other, in just that alone, but also doing interactive events from multiple locations as well. So a series of events that attach to multiple breweries, kind of forcing the guests to travel. As you mentioned earlier, Gen Z doesn't like to travel just to get beer, but they will travel to get a new experience. And so if
100%.
you're able to do like a whole a universe, like an MC, like a cinematic universe type of event structure, where you're working with breweries that are within, say, a 30-minute drive from each other, not on the same day, and you coordinate these events that kind of work in tandem with each other, Again, kind of falling off of the scavenger hunt idea, where you're able to do one event at Brewery A, and then later on in the week, or maybe next week, that same event or a very similar version of that event is happening at Brewery B. But in order to gain the points or get the experience,
Yep.
you have to have had, just kind of like watching all these like MCU movies. It's like in order to get all the jokes, you have to have watched the movie from like 3 years ago. In order to get all the experience at Brewery B, Brewery C, Brewery D, you had to have gone to Brewery A, B, and C prior, as well. So like actually connecting with your local scene and working with each other instead of against each
Yep.
other. As working for a lot of breweries myself, I understand like everybody is competing for tap space. Everybody's competing for shelf space, and ultimately you are also competing for guests to come in and dine and experience, but that doesn't have to be true all the time. Like people are always going to choose different areas and different things that they want to do, especially this generation. So if you can collaborate and actually share that knowledge of your guest interactions, or like share the guests themselves and not trying to hold them, this is my guest, I'm gonna like, oh, they're only coming to my place. Well, you'll always lose because that'll never be true. So I like your passport idea, of course. That is a version of that as well. But
Hmm.
being creative with those types of in-house events, they don't have to happen. It doesn't have to be a bar crawl. It doesn't have to happen all in one night. But it be having them like create an experience and create a memory from their first experience. Have that travel over
Yeah.
to the next experience, even if it's in a different four walls. That association is still going to be there with both places.
Yeah, and real quick, an example of, because even scavenger hunts at this point, people are using scavenger hunts and passports, but even putting a different variation on that is completely possible. So we have and we have an ongoing event right now where it's at root, yes, a scavenger hunt, but we worked with a local artist where he builds puzzles. He builds unique puzzles at activating spaces. That's his whole thing. So he works with the airport. He works with the city a lot. We work together in putting together this narrative of, we called it the Brewer's Bounty. Um, each location has a unique puzzle that solves this meta
That's fun.
scavenger hunt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to go to each location. It's driving that. It's each bar that's a part of it is now getting new patrons, getting new customers, etc. So, and it's time framed like a passport, like a scavenger hunt.
And it's experiential. It's not a discount. You're not getting anything for it. It's actually like experiential, to be part of it. To actually have to physically visit a place, and you're not just visiting a place because you're gonna get your pints 50% off, or like you're not going to get something at a discount per se. If you want to build that in, sure, whatever, but that's not the reason it's an event like that is
Yeah.
successful. So I like that. That's a fun one. I like that a lot. Um, cool. Well, I guess we're hitting close to the end here. I'm gonna give just a quick little synopsis of like I started off heavy on this, but I'm GoTab in integrating different technology into your brew pub experience. One of the best things that we do is create an immersive experience to the crowd that wants it, and also being able to provide a more traditional experience for the crowd that doesn't want it, and be able to create that hybrid mentality and allow operations to thrive, not thrive, excuse me, but be flexible and adapt to their surroundings, to different generational trends, and be able to be nimble on their feet. And so I can't stress enough how important, just incorporating technology into your four walls is without it being obvious. And technology should always work with you and not against you, regardless. And it will always work against you if you're only doing it in one certain way. If you are incorporating a platform or any kind of technology that is able to adapt with not only you and how you want to operate, but also the crowd that you want to generate, into and tap into, then you'll be successful. So keep an eye on what you're utilizing, whether it's GoTab or any other system for that matter. And as long as they're able to adapt with you, then you're going to be in good shape. Um, and then partnering with organizations that know what they're doing in this space, like Evan, and being able to tap into the crowd and be able to execute these events. If you're just not familiar and you're not used to doing it, find somebody who is, whether it's people in your already on your staff or third parties that again have been doing it for a while. They know their stuff, they know who they're trying to tap into and the trends that go along with that as well. So Evan, I mean, I know that's pretty much that. I mean, that sums up what I mean,
Yeah.
you know what you're doing.
Yeah. And I guess my final point, like, back to Gen Z, just have fun, be authentic, and be creative with different things. Try to put yourself in somebody's shoes of what they're consuming and meet them halfway to where they want to be, and they'll be your strongest advocates. They really will be.
All right. Well, Aaron, if you're back there, I think we hit the nail on the head here. And we are, I think we're gonna wrap it up.